Sometimes the most painful part of spiritual growth is not what God adds to your life, but what He quietly removes from it first. Lately, certain people may have started pulling away from you without explanation. Conversations that once felt natural now feel forced. Relationships that used to feel stable suddenly feel distant, awkward, or emotionally disconnected. And the confusing part is that you did not necessarily fight with these people. There may not have been betrayal, confrontation, or dramatic endings. Yet something shifted. The connection no longer flows the same way it once did. And deep down, your spirit can feel it. What many chosen people do not realize is that before God opens the door to a major breakthrough, He often begins separating them from energies, relationships, and environments that cannot spiritually travel into the next season with them. At first, this separation feels personal. You wonder if you did something wrong. You replay conversations in your mind, trying to understand why people suddenly changed toward you. But sometimes the distance has very little to do with your failure and everything to do with your elevation. Because not everyone assigned to your past is meant to walk beside you into your future. Some people were connected to the version of you that survived pain, confusion, emotional dependency, or spiritual stagnation. But now your spirit is changing. Your discernment is growing stronger. Your priorities are shifting, and without realizing it, your energy is no longer fully compatible with certain relationships that once felt familiar. This is why some people became uncomfortable around you after your healing began. Your silence changed. Your boundaries became stronger. Your need for constant validation started disappearing. And once chosen people stop abandoning themselves emotionally just to preserve connection, certain dynamics naturally begin falling apart. That does not mean you are becoming cold or difficult. It means your spirit is no longer willing to remain attached to environments that drain your peace or delay your growth. The painful truth is that some relationships only survived because you kept overextending yourself to maintain them. But God saw the exhaustion you were carrying behind the scenes. He saw the emotional weight, the confusion, the imbalance, and the hidden strain you kept trying to normalize. So now the separation is happening quietly, not to punish you, but to protect the breakthrough your next season requires. Because some doors will never open while certain people still have unrestricted access to your spirit. And what feels like loss right now may actually be God removing limitations. Your future can no longer carry one of the hardest truths chosen people eventually have to face is that some relationships survive only because you keep sacrificing your peace to maintain them. For a long time, you may not have recognized how emotionally exhausted you truly were. You became so accustomed to carrying other people's emotions, fixing tension, smoothing over problems, and constantly giving your energy that exhaustion started feeling normal. You convinced yourself that loyalty meant enduring imbalance, that love meant overextending yourself, that being spiritually mature meant continuously understanding people who rarely tried to understand you in return. But God saw something you were trying not to fully acknowledge. Certain people around you were quietly draining your spirit while benefiting from your emotional availability. And because chosen ones naturally operate from empathy, they often tolerate unhealthy dynamics far longer than they should. You kept giving chances, explaining behavior away, and trying to preserve connections that were slowly exhausting your inner peace. The dangerous part is that emotional draining rarely appears obvious in the beginning. It often hides beneath familiarity, routine, and emotional attachment. These people may not have openly hated you or directly betrayed you. Some may have genuinely cared about you in certain ways, but their presence still kept your spirit heavy. Every interaction required emotional labor. Every conversation left you mentally exhausted. You constantly felt responsible for maintaining the connection while they unconsciously consumed your energy without realizing how much it was costing you internally. Over time, your spirit began reacting to this imbalance even before your mind fully understood it. You started feeling emotionally tired around certain people for reasons you could not explain logically. You needed more solitude after interactions that once felt normal. Conversations began feeling forced. Your peace started disappearing faster around environments you used to tolerate comfortably. That was not random emotional instability. That was spiritual discernment awakening inside you. God was allowing your spirit to feel what your emotions kept trying to ignore. Chosen people often stay connected to draining relationships because they fear becoming misunderstood, isolated, or emotionally disconnected. So instead of honoring their discomfort, they overcompensate. They give more energy, more patience, more understanding, more emotional access. But eventually, the spirit reaches a point where it can no longer carry imbalance without consequence. And that is when God begins separating people quietly. Not because every person involved is evil, but because your next season requires emotional clarity, strength, and spiritual alignment that exhaustion cannot sustain. Some individuals around you were unknowingly attached to an older version of you. A version that constantly overgave, overexplained, and emotionally carried everyone else while neglecting itself. But as your healing deepened, your energy started changing. You became quieter, more discerning, less emotionally available for draining dynamics. And the people who unconsciously benefited from your emotional overextension immediately felt the shift. Some became distant. Others reacted emotionally. Some relationships suddenly became awkward or strained without obvious explanation. But what was really happening was this: your spirit stopped feeding connections that only survived through your constant self-sacrifice. That is why certain people began falling away during your healing process. God was exposing how many relationships depended on your emotional depletion to continue functioning. And perhaps the most painful realization of all is understanding that some people were more attached to your availability than your well-being. They were comfortable receiving your support, your patience, your understanding, and your emotional labor, but uncomfortable when you began protecting your peace instead. Once you stopped constantly fixing everything, the imbalance became visible. Once your boundaries strengthened, certain connections naturally weakened. And that separation hurts because chosen people genuinely love deeply. You did not want to lose people. You wanted reciprocity. You wanted sincerity. You wanted relationships that felt spiritually safe instead of emotionally draining. But God knew something your heart struggled to accept. Your breakthrough cannot grow inside environments that continuously exhaust your spirit. Your next season requires energy, clarity, confidence, and emotional freedom. And certain people simply could not enter that season with you while carrying the same patterns that kept you spiritually burdened before. This is why the removal feels so emotional. You are not only grieving people, you are grieving versions of yourself that stayed too long in situations your spirit had already outgrown. But slowly clarity is replacing confusion. You are beginning to understand that emotional exhaustion was never a sign of love. Constant heaviness was never peace. And relationships that repeatedly drain your spirit are not assignments you were meant to carry forever. God is removing certain people because your spirit deserves room to breathe again, room to heal, room to grow, room to receive what cannot enter your life while you are still emotionally weighed down by connections that were quietly consuming more of you than they were ever pouring back into you. What makes this season especially difficult for many chosen people is that the separation often comes with isolation. Suddenly, the people you once talked to every day become distant. Invitations decrease. Conversations fade. Certain relationships lose their emotional depth without warning. And in the middle of all of it, you begin spending more time alone than you ever expected. At first, this isolation feels painful. You wonder why life suddenly became quieter. You question whether you are losing people, losing connection, or somehow becoming emotionally disconnected from the world around you. But what you do not realize yet is that God often isolates chosen people before elevating them. Because breakthrough requires transformation, and transformation rarely happens in environments full of constant noise, emotional distraction, and external influence. There are certain lessons your spirit can only learn in solitude. For a long time, your identity may have been heavily connected to relationships, routines, emotional attachment, and the expectations of others. You spent years adapting yourself to maintain connection, preserve peace, and remain emotionally available even when it drained you internally. But isolation begins exposing who you are when nobody is constantly pulling on your energy. It forces you to sit with yourself without distraction, without emotional performance, without the need to constantly explain, prove, or maintain relationships that no longer align with your growth. And while that process feels lonely at first, it is quietly rebuilding you from the inside out. This is why your desire for silence has increased lately, why certain conversations suddenly feel exhausting, why you crave distance from environments that once felt normal. God is slowing your spirit down long enough for clarity to develop. Because when chosen people are constantly surrounded by noise, they struggle to hear themselves clearly. They absorb too many emotions, too many opinions, too much external energy. But isolation creates discernment. It strengthens intuition. It teaches emotional independence. And perhaps most importantly, it breaks unhealthy dependence on constant validation and external reassurance. The painful part is that during this season, it can feel like everything familiar is disappearing at once. Old connections fade. Old habits lose meaning. Even your emotional reactions begin changing. You become quieter, more reflective, more selective about who receives your energy. And because this transformation happens internally before it becomes visible externally, many chosen people mistake spiritual preparation for abandonment. But God is not abandoning you. He is removing distractions that once kept your spirit emotionally scattered. He is teaching you how to stand emotionally grounded without constantly leaning on people who were never meant to carry your future. Some of the relationships that faded were built around versions of you that no longer exist. Versions that tolerated emotional imbalance, ignored intuition, and overextended themselves to avoid loneliness. But your spirit has outgrown survival mode now, and isolation is teaching you how to trust your own discernment instead of constantly seeking emotional direction from others. This season is also revealing how much strength you actually carry internally, because the same silence that once scared you is now becoming peaceful. The same solitude that once felt empty is now becoming restorative. You are learning how to protect your energy instead of constantly giving it away. And slowly, your relationship with yourself is becoming stronger than your fear of losing people. That is spiritual growth. Real transformation often happens privately, long before the breakthrough becomes visible publicly. And one day, you will look back and realize the isolation was not punishment at all. It was preparation. God was separating you from noise, confusion, emotional dependency, and draining connections so He could rebuild your clarity, your confidence, and your spirit before your next season begins. One of the deepest reasons God removes certain people before a breakthrough is because breakthrough requires detachment from emotional patterns that were quietly keeping you spiritually stuck. And many chosen people do not realize how emotionally attached they became to relationships, routines, and environments that were no longer healthy for them. Sometimes it was not even the people themselves that held you back most. It was the emotional dependency connected to them, the fear of losing connection, the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of standing alone without familiar emotional support. So even when your spirit felt uncomfortable, you stayed attached to what was draining you because familiarity felt safer than uncertainty. But God cannot fully elevate someone who is still emotionally chained to patterns that weaken their discernment, their peace, and their spiritual clarity. That is why certain attachments had to break first. At first it felt painful because your heart interpreted the separation as loss. You questioned why relationships suddenly became unstable, why conversations stopped flowing naturally, why people you cared about started drifting away or reacting differently toward you. But beneath the surface, something much deeper was happening spiritually. God was exposing how many of your emotional decisions had been rooted in attachment instead of alignment. You had become accustomed to preserving relationships at the expense of your own peace. You tolerated inconsistency because you feared abandonment. You overextended yourself emotionally because you thought constant sacrifice would preserve connection. But emotional self-abandonment can never lead to true breakthrough. And eventually, your spirit became too exhausted to continue carrying dynamics that were no longer aligned with your growth. This is why your boundaries started becoming stronger recently, why your tolerance for emotional confusion decreased, why certain environments suddenly felt heavier than before. God was teaching you discernment through discomfort. He was showing you what your spirit can no longer carry into the next season. Because breakthroughs are not only about receiving blessings, they are also about becoming emotionally prepared to sustain them. And preparation often requires separation from people, habits, and attachments that constantly pull your energy backward. Some individuals around you were connected to your survival season, not your elevation season. They knew the version of you that constantly sought reassurance, emotional closeness, and external validation. But now your spirit is evolving beyond that identity. You are learning how to stand emotionally grounded even when relationships change. You are learning how to protect your peace without feeling guilty for it. And most importantly, you are learning that not every connection is meant to remain permanent simply because it once felt meaningful. That lesson changes everything because it breaks emotional dependency at the root. Suddenly, you stop forcing relationships that no longer feel spiritually safe. You stop chasing understanding from people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop shrinking your boundaries just to avoid temporary loneliness. And although that process feels uncomfortable, it creates room for something far healthier to enter your life. God often removes emotional distractions before major opportunities appear because divided energy delays clarity. You cannot fully walk into a new season while constantly carrying emotional weight from old attachments your spirit already outgrew. And perhaps the hardest part is that some people will not understand your distance. They will interpret your boundaries as rejection, your silence as coldness, your peace as detachment. But what they fail to recognize is that your spirit is no longer operating from fear. It is operating from alignment. You are finally learning that protecting your peace is not selfishness. Letting go is not failure, and losing certain connections does not mean your life is falling apart. Sometimes it means God is clearing emotional space for the breakthrough your spirit has been praying for all along. Because what He is preparing for you next cannot fully enter your life while you are still emotionally attached to what was quietly keeping you spiritually small.